The breaking point. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still at the negotiation table, her hands folded calmly in front of her as High Regent Zephyros delivered what he clearly believed would be humanity's final terms. The massive reptilian alien towered over the table even while seated, his scales gleaming under the artificial lights of the diplomatic station. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched with varying expressions of pity, fear, and anticipation. The station itself was neutral territory, built specifically for these negotiations 3 months ago. It orbited Alpha Centauri in the empty space between systems, far from any world that might claim ownership. The humans had come here in good faith, hoping to establish peaceful relations with the Draconian Empire that controlled this sector of the galaxy. That hope was now dying a slow, deliberate death. "Let me be absolutely clear," Zephyros continued, his voice a rumbling bass that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "The Draconian Empire offers humanity a place within our glorious civilization. You will retain limited self-governance over your single world, under our guidance, of course. Your military will be disbanded and integrated into our forces. Your scientists will share all research with our academies. Your trade will flow through our networks, with appropriate taxation. In return, we offer protection, technology, and the chance to serve a greater purpose than your species has ever known." Captain Marcus Rodriguez, seated behind Sarah, felt his jaw clench. The man had spent 20 years in Earth's military before being assigned to diplomatic security, and every instinct told him this was surrender wrapped in pretty words. He caught the eye of Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's chief science advisor, and saw his own frustration reflected there. Sarah's expression remained perfectly neutral. She had expected this moment for weeks now. The negotiations had been a carefully orchestrated dance, with the Draconian Empire slowly revealing their true intentions. They had never come to these talks seeking partnership or alliance. They had come to formalize humanity's submission. "Your terms require humanity to surrender our sovereignty, our military, our scientific independence, and our economic freedom," Sarah said quietly. "In exchange, we become a vassal state under Draconian rule. Is this correct?" Zephyros's 4 eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. "Vassal is such a harsh word, Ambassador Chen. We prefer the term protected species. Many civilizations have thrived under our guidance. The Corellians, for instance, have seen their population double since joining our empire 40 years ago." "The Corellians were facing extinction from a plague when you arrived," Dr. Vasquez interjected. "They had no choice but to accept your terms. We are not facing extinction." The High Regent's attention shifted to Elena, and his massive head tilted slightly. "Are you not? Our surveys of your space indicate a single world with barely 8 billion inhabitants. One ship, one asteroid, one solar flare could end your entire species. We offer you the security of 1,000 worlds and the protection of fleets that have conquered half this galaxy." Sarah raised a hand slightly, and Elena fell silent. The ambassador had negotiated treaties on 5 continents before humanity reached the stars, and she recognized the rhythm of this conversation. They were being offered a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. "What if we decline your generous offer?" Sarah asked. The chamber fell completely silent. Several of the alien observers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even the translation devices seemed to pause before converting Zephyros's response. "Decline." The word seemed to taste strange in the alien's mouth. "Ambassador, I fear you misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation between equals. The Draconian Empire spans 400 star systems. Our fleet could reduce your world to ash within days of arriving in your system. We are offering you the chance to avoid that fate through willing cooperation." Marcus felt his hand move instinctively toward his sidearm before stopping himself. Around the chamber, he could see the Draconian guards taking note of his movement. Their own weapons were already visible, hanging from their armored harnesses like promises of violence. Sarah stood slowly, her chair scraping against the metal floor. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. High Regent Zephyros, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding here. You seem to believe that humanity came to these negotiations because we were weak or desperate, that we sought your protection because we feared for our survival. She walked to the large viewport that dominated one wall of the chamber. Through the transparent aluminum, stars wheeled slowly past as the station rotated. Somewhere out there, 30 light-years away, was Earth. The world that had sent her here with very specific instructions. The truth is much simpler, Sarah continued, not turning around. We came here because we hoped you might be reasonable. We hoped that a civilization as old and as powerful as yours might have learned the wisdom of cooperation over conquest. We were, apparently, wrong. Zephyros leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. Ambassador, you speak as though you have alternatives. Our intelligence indicates your species has barely mastered faster-than-light travel. You have one world, a handful of colonies, and perhaps 50 ships that could charitably be called military vessels. We have conquered civilizations 100 times more advanced than yours. Sarah turned back to face him, and something in her expression made several aliens in the chamber shift nervously. It was not fear or desperation. It was not even anger. It was the calm, cold look of someone who had just made a very important decision. 72 hours, she said quietly. I beg your pardon. You're giving humanity 72 hours to accept your terms or face invasion. Is that correct? Zephyros' eyes narrowed. Those were not my exact words, but yes. We are prepared to be generous with time for your leaders to see reason. Sarah nodded once, then reached for the communication device at her belt. The draconian guards tensed, but she moved slowly and deliberately, activating the unit with a series of precise touches. This is Ambassador Chen to all human vessels and installations, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber speakers. Operation Lighthouse is now active. Repeat, Operation Lighthouse is active. All personnel should proceed to designated positions immediately. She clipped the device back to her belt and looked directly at Zephyros. High Regent, humanity respectfully declined your offer of protection. We also reject your ultimatum. If the Draconian Empire wishes to attack Earth, you are welcome to try. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several alien observers began speaking rapidly in their own languages, while others activated their own communication devices. Zephyros himself seemed frozen in place, as though he couldn't quite process what he had just heard. Ambassador Chen called out Mediator Voth, the neutral party who had been overseeing the negotiations. The elderly alien's voice shook slightly. Perhaps we could arrange a recess to allow for consultation with your government. Sarah shook her head. No consultation is necessary. Earth's position is clear. She turned to Marcus and Alina. Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Vasquez, we're leaving. As the three humans gathered their materials and prepared to leave, Zephyros finally found his voice. This is madness. You cannot possibly believe your species can stand against the might of the Draconian Empire. Sarah paused at the chamber door and looked back one final time. High Regent, you've made one critical error in all your calculations. You assume that because humanity is young, we are weak. You assume that because we haven't conquered other worlds, we cannot defend our own. Most importantly, you assume that because we sought peace, we are unprepared for war. She smiled then, and it was not a pleasant expression. In 72 hours, you'll learn exactly how wrong you've been. The human delegation left the chamber, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Behind them, chaos erupted as alien representatives began frantically contacting their respective governments. The negotiations that were supposed to bring humanity into the Draconian Empire had just ended in the most unexpected way possible. Aboard the human transport ship Defiance, docked at the station, Sarah immediately went to the secure communications array. Marcus and Alina joined her, along with the ship's captain, a weathered woman named Janet Torres, who had been waiting for this moment. Sarah, Alina said quietly, Please tell me we actually have a plan." Sarah was already working at the communication console, entering codes that would activate quantum entanglement transmitters hidden throughout human space. "We've had a plan for 15 years, Alina. Ever since our first contact with the Draconians, Earth's governments have been preparing for this exact scenario." The console came alive with status reports from across human space. Hidden military installations, concealed weapons platforms, and classified research facilities all confirmed their readiness. But most importantly, signals began arriving from locations that supposedly didn't exist. "My God," Marcus breathed, reading over Sarah's shoulder. "How many ships do we actually have?" Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the deployment reports scroll past. "More than the Draconians think. Much more." Captain Torres was already preparing the ship for departure. "Where to, Ambassador?" "Earth," Sarah replied. "We need to be home when our guests arrive." 3 hours later, as the Defiance jumped to faster-than-light travel, High Regent Zephyros stood in his flagship's command center, watching his own fleet prepare for what he believed would be a simple conquest. Around him, screens showed the positions of 60 Draconian warships, each one capable of destroying a city. "Admiral Vexkoth," he called to his military commander, "what is our estimate for subjugating the human homeworld?" The scared veteran turned from his tactical display. "Minimal resistance expected, my lord. Our intelligence suggests they have perhaps 30 ships that could pose any threat. We should have complete orbital control within hours of arrival." Zephyros nodded, but something about the human ambassador's confidence continued to bother him. No species had ever rejected draconian terms so calmly, so completely. Even civilizations with significant military power had attempted to negotiate, to find some middle ground. The humans had simply said no and walked away. "Double our reconnaissance efforts," he ordered. "I want to know everything about human capabilities before we arrive in their system." "Of course, my lord," Vexkoth replied. "Though I suspect we'll find little beyond what we already know. Humans are clever for such a young species, but cleverness cannot overcome such overwhelming superiority in numbers and technology." As the Draconian fleet began its journey toward Earth, neither Zephyros nor his admiral noticed the small, stealth human ships that had been watching them from the edges of the system. Those ships were already racing ahead, carrying word that the trap was about to be sprung. Humanity had spent 15 years preparing for this moment, ever since first contact had revealed the true nature of galactic politics. While publicly appearing eager for peaceful integration, they had secretly been building, planning, and positioning assets throughout their region of space. The Draconian Empire was about to learn why no human government had ever surrendered without a fight, and why their species had never met a challenge they couldn't overcome through ingenuity, determination, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The galaxy's youngest spacefaring civilization was about to teach the oldest empire a lesson it would never forget. The galaxy learns fear. Admiral Kane Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the tactical display with the calm satisfaction of a man whose 20-year plan was finally coming to fruition. The massive vessel hung in space beyond Pluto's orbit, invisible to conventional sensors and completely unknown to Draconian intelligence. Around it, a fleet of ships that officially didn't exist prepared for the most important battle in human history. "Admiral," called his tactical officer, Commander Lisa Park. "Long-range sensors confirm the Draconian fleet has entered the outer system. 60 vessels, just as our intelligence predicted." Kane nodded. The Prometheus and her sister ships had been built in secret shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt, using technology developed through 15 years of careful research and preparation. While the galaxy believed humanity barely understood faster-than-light travel, human scientists had been pushing the boundaries of physics in ways their alien neighbors couldn't imagine. "Signal all units," Kane ordered. "Operation Lighthouse is now in its final phase. All ships maintain stealth protocols until my command." Across the solar system, hundreds of platforms that had been disguised as mining stations, research outposts, and communication relays began powering up their true purpose. The Draconian Empire was flying into a trap 15 years in the making. On Earth, in the command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General David Cross watched as his displays lit up with incoming data. The solar defense grid was fully operational, its weapons platforms spread throughout the system, and connected by quantum communication links that allowed instant coordination. "Status report," he called out. "All grid stations report ready," came the reply from his chief of operations. "Stealth fields are holding. The Draconians show no indication they've detected our platforms." Cross allowed himself a thin smile. "Good. Let them think they're attacking a defenseless world." High above Earth's surface, in a facility that appeared to be a simple weather monitoring station, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically at a console covered in displays and controls. She had returned from the failed negotiations just 12 hours ago, but there had been no time to rest. Her part in Operation Lighthouse was perhaps the most crucial of all. "Elena," came Sarah Chen's voice over the communication system. The ambassador was in the Situation Room with Earth's political leadership, coordinating the global response. "Are you ready?" Elena's fingers danced across the controls, activating systems that had been tested in secret for years. "Quantum broadcast array is online. We're ready to show the galaxy what really happened here." Light years away, Kethmol of the Neutral Observer Corp floated in his small ship at the edge of the Sol system, his multiple eyes focused on the sensors as they tracked the approaching Draconian fleet. As one of the galaxy's most respected independent journalists, he had been granted permission to document what everyone expected to be a routine conquest. The Draconians had been very confident about their timeline. They expected to have orbital control within hours and complete planetary surrender within days. Kethmol had seen it happen before to dozens of other worlds. Young civilizations simply couldn't stand against the Empire's military might. But something felt different about this situation. The humans had been too calm, too confident when they walked away from negotiations. Most species begged for mercy or attempted to negotiate better terms. The humans had simply said no and left. "Beginning to understand why I wanted to document this personally," Kethmol murmured to himself as his sensors tracked the Draconian fleet's approach. Admiral Vexkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, as his fleet swept into the inner solar system. Long-range scans showed exactly what Draconian intelligence had predicted: a handful of orbital stations around Earth, a few mining operations in the asteroid belt, and perhaps 30 ships that could charitably be called military vessels. "Pitiful," he commented to his second-in-command. "Their entire defense force couldn't challenge a single one of our cruisers." "Shall we demand surrender first, Admiral?" the younger officer asked. Vexkoth considered this. Standard protocol required offering terms before beginning bombardment, but the humans had already rejected Draconian mercy. "Open a channel to the planet. Let's see if they've reconsidered their position." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what appeared to be a government building on Earth. A human male in military uniform looked back at them with steady eyes. General Cross had volunteered to be the face of Earth's response. "This is Admiral Vexkoth of the Draconian Imperial Fleet," the alien commander announced. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately, and we will show mercy to your population." Cross smiled, and something about that expression made several Draconian officers shift uncomfortably. "Admiral, this is General David Cross of the United Earth Defense Forces. We appreciate your offer, but we must respectfully decline. General, you have 30 ships. We have 60, each one superior to your best vessel. This is not a battle you can win." "You're absolutely right," Cross agreed calmly. 30 ships couldn't possibly defeat your fleet." Vexkoth frowned, confused by the human's tone. "Then you will surrender." "Oh, we're not surrendering," Cross said. "We're just not using 30 ships." The screen went dark, and alarms began sounding throughout the Draconian fleet. Sensor operators shouted warnings as their displays suddenly filled with new contacts. Ships were decloaking throughout the system, emerging from behind asteroids, planets, and moons. But these weren't the primitive vessels Draconian intelligence had cataloged. Impossible. Vexkoth breathed as his tactical display updated. Over 200 human ships now surrounded his fleet, and they were broadcasting energy signatures unlike anything in the Draconian database. On the Prometheus, Admiral Kane Thompson smiled as his fleet revealed itself. All ships, execute attack pattern Delta. Disable, don't destroy. We want survivors to carry word back to their empire. The human fleet moved with precision that spoke of years of training and coordination. Their ships were sleek and fast, built with technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Instead of the primitive fusion drives the Draconians expected, these vessels used quantum displacement engines that allowed them to effectively teleport short distances in normal space. The first human ship appeared directly above the Dominator, its weapons charging. Before the Draconian crew could react, precisely targeted energy beams struck their ship's weapon systems and engines, disabling them without causing catastrophic damage. Shields down, weapons offline. Came the frantic reports from across Vexkoth's bridge. Around them, the rest of the Draconian fleet was suffering the same fate. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, struck with surgical precision, and vanished again before return fire could be targeted. It was like being attacked by ghosts. This is impossible, Vexkoth roared. Our intelligence indicated they barely understood space travel. His tactical officer's voice shook as he delivered his report. Admiral, I'm reading energy signatures consistent with quantum displacement technology. They're not using conventional propulsion at all. But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their capabilities. From hidden platforms throughout the system, massive energy beams lanced out, striking Draconian ships with pinpoint accuracy. The solar defense grid, disguised as civilian infrastructure for over a decade, revealed itself in devastating fashion. Within 20 minutes, the entire Draconian fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, not obliterated, but systematically and efficiently neutralized. Every ship hung dead in space, their crews alive but their vessels completely powerless. High Regent Zephyros, monitoring the battle from his own flagship at the edge of the system, watched in horror as his supposedly invincible fleet was neutralized by a species he had dismissed as primitives. How? He whispered. How is this possible? His communication officer looked up from his console with terror in his eyes. My lord, we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, including quantum entanglement channels. The entire galaxy is receiving this signal. On screens throughout civilized space, Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared. She stood in what was clearly a command center, with tactical displays showing the disabled Draconian fleet clearly visible behind her. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, her voice calm and professional. My name is Sarah Chen, Ambassador of the United Earth Federation. 15 minutes ago, the Draconian Empire attempted to invade our solar system with a fleet of 60 warships. As you can see, that invasion has failed. The display shifted to show exterior views of the disabled Draconian vessels, helpless and drifting in space. For 15 years, since our first contact with galactic civilization, humanity has been preparing for this moment. While publicly seeking peaceful integration, we have secretly developed technologies and capabilities that we hoped never to use. The Draconian Empire's ultimatum forced our hand. Sarah paused, letting the implications sink in across 1,000 worlds. Let me be clear, humanity does not seek conquest or empire. We do not wish to replace the Draconians as the galaxy's dominant power. What we demand is simple recognition that we are not prey. We are not subjects to be conquered or vassals to be protected. We are an independent civilization capable of defending ourselves and our interests. Throughout the galaxy, alien leaders watched in stunned silence as the youngest spacefaring species demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded those of civilizations thousands of years older. The disabled Draconian vessels will be returned to their territory unharmed, along with their crews, Sarah continued. This is not an act of war, but a demonstration of defensive capability. Any empire that wishes to deal with humanity as equals will find us willing partners. Any empire that seeks to conquer us will find us very dangerous enemies. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to process what they had just witnessed. On his observation ship, Keth Mole worked frantically to compile his report. This wasn't just a military victory. It was a fundamental shift in galactic politics. A species had not only refused to submit to the Draconian Empire, but had demonstrated the power to back up that refusal. "This changes everything," he murmured into his recording device. "The age of Draconian dominance may be ending." Aboard the Dominator, Admiral Vexkoth sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed his fleet's complete helplessness. Emergency power kept life support running. But every weapon, every engine, every system that could pose a threat had been precisely disabled. "Admiral," his communication officer reported quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." The screen activated to show Admiral Kane Thompson on the bridge of the Prometheus. The human's expression was professional but firm. "Admiral Vexkoth, this is Admiral Thompson of the United Earth Defense Forces. Your fleet will be escorted to the edge of our system and released. You are free to return to Draconian space with a message for your leadership." Vexkoth found his voice. "What message?" "That humanity is willing to negotiate as equals, but we will never submit as vassals. If the Draconian Empire wishes to coexist with us, they can approach our diplomats with respect. If they wish to test our defenses again, they are welcome to try with a larger fleet." Thompson's expression grew cold. "But they should understand that what happened here today was a demonstration, not our full capability. We showed restraint because we prefer peace to war. That restraint has limits." Hours later, as human ships towed the disabled Draconian fleet toward the system's edge, emergency sessions were being called in governments throughout the galaxy. The balance of power that had existed for millennia had shifted in a single afternoon. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again at a viewport, but this time she was aboard the orbital station above Earth, watching as the last Draconian ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel. Behind her, communication consoles chimed constantly with incoming messages from alien governments requesting diplomatic contact. "Think they'll try again?" asked Marcus Rodriguez, joining her at the viewport. Sarah considered the question carefully. "Not the same way. They've learned that humanity can't be conquered through simple military superiority. But they're not going to just forget this humiliation either." "So what comes next?" Sarah smiled, but it was a confident expression now, not the cold smile she had worn during the failed negotiations. "Now we get what we always wanted. The chance to take our place in the galaxy as equals. Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as humanity." Behind them, Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her communication station. "Sarah, you need to see this. We're receiving formal diplomatic requests from over 40 different civilizations. Everyone wants to establish relations with us now." Sarah nodded. It would take time to build the kind of relationships humanity needed to thrive among the stars, but they had just proven the most important point of all. They could not be forced into submission. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, not because they were conquerors, but because they were survivors who refused to surrender their freedom. And sometimes that was the most dangerous kind of enemy an empire could face. In the depths of space, racing back toward Draconian territory, High Regent Zephyros sat in his rescued command ship and contemplated the impossible. A species barely 50 years into space travel had humiliated the galaxy's most powerful empire. But more than that, they had done it while showing restraint and offering peace. For the first time in his long career, Zephyros began to wonder if the Draconian way of conquest and domination was truly the path to galactic stability. The humans had proven that strength didn't have to mean oppression, that a civilization could be powerful without being predatory. It was a lesson the galaxy would take years to fully understand, but the first step had been taken. Humanity had said no to subjugation and made it stick. the universe would never be quite the same.